Tawana?
Thank you. Madam Vice Chair, we are live.
All right. Good afternoon. I am Dawana Little, Vice Chair of the Community Reparations Commission. I'd like to welcome you to the May 6, 2024 specially called meeting. All CRC members and staff are participating virtually for today's meeting. The live meeting will be streamed on the city's YouTube channel, accessed through the YouTube icon on the front page of the city's website or via the live stream. You may also listen to the meeting via phone by calling 855-925-2801 and entering meeting code 9040. And for today's virtual meeting, we will have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in to comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 9040. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, speakers will need to push *3 to enter the speaker queue. I will now do the roll call and begin the meeting. Dwayne Barton. So for the roll call, please just take your phone off mute and say aye or here or whatever your preference is. Norma Baines. Renata Conyers. Christopher Gordon.
Here.
Roy Harris.
I didn't hear my name, Norma Baines.
All right. I got you, Miss Norma. Renata Conyers. Christopher Gordon is here. Roy Harris.
Here.
Shonda Jackson. Kimberly Jones. Dawana Little, I'm here. Dwayne McAfee. Bobette Mays. Glenda McDowell. Tamara Miller. Dwight Mullen.
I'm present, but having technical difficulties.
Mildred Nance Carson.
Present.
Osandu McPeters. Thomas Priester. Dwayne Richardson.
Here.
Eric Robinson. Raynita Waters. CC Weston.
The one I'm here.
Okay. CC Weston. D Williams.
Here.
MZ Yehuda.
Present.
Keith Young.
Here.
Our alternates D Burris. Tiffany Debolo.
Here.
Shakiki Giles McBaden. Jesse Ray.
Here.
We have 12.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Bernice.
No. Go ahead.
We have 12. I'm counting 12 with without the alternates. When you count the alternates, we have 14.
Did you get
So-
me, Dewana?
Oh no, I didn't. You make 13.
Yeah, I'm here. I was having some problems. I'm here. Bobby Mays, I'm here.
All right, we have a quorum. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Dewana. Salah, do you want to mention the minutes, or you? Okay.
Yeah, I can do that. Thank you. So we don't have minutes for this meeting, nor do we have a survey. We will be able to vote and approve on the meeting minutes from our last meeting at our next meeting in person on the 13th. You'll also receive a survey that has questions from our last meeting as well as this meeting directly after this meeting.
Perfect.
I can do the objectives for today if you.
Okay. Yeah. I'll go ahead and do them. I can go ahead and do them. Thank you, Salah. So you all, our objectives for today, one, we will have city and county updates. And then what we are going to do is review the voting process. Once we review the voting process, we're going to do a practice activity using a platform called menti.com. We're going to try it. I know we're virtual, so we're going to try it just to get us in the habit of decision making. And after that, we will then we'll go ahead and vote on the items that have been submitted to the CRC to vote tonight. The third objective is to discuss community engagement. So we'll have we are putting the community engagement update at the end so we can prioritize the voting. So those are our three objectives for tonight's meeting. And so we will begin with city and county updates.
Thank you, Renisha. So I wanted to provide you all an update with the vendor process. Remember back in, I believe in December or January, I shared with you that Civility Localizer Christine Edwards would no longer, her contract ended at the end of April, and you all needed to become vendors with the city in order to be paid. Christine will be paying you for April and May. So you'll be receiving a payment from Christine sometime this month for April. May's payment will be paid by the city in June. However, I am still missing W-9s from about half of you all. So I received about 13 W-9s and have set you all up, those who have submitted as vendors. I will be sending you an email to those who have not submitted their W-9s because I need to get you set up, and you also need to sign a contract. And the contracts need to go out by next week. So for those who did not turn in or have not received a W-9 from, I will send you an email just to those who do not have W-9s in as of yet, so we can get you set up as a vendor. And that's all I have for my updates. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, Salah, will you share screen? Is it allowing you to share screen? Oh, you're muted. There we go.
I am sharing and I'll put it in present mode for you.
Perfect. Okay. All right, you all. So we are going to go ahead and kind of review the voting process for tonight and moving forward. So in this presentation, one, I wanted to start with what happens next. So beginning with the end in mind. And so I'm going to review some of the CRC phases, like what happens after we vote. I want to make sure that everybody is clear on what happens. Let's remind everybody what the voting pre-process was. These are terms that I just put together, but I'm going to just explain how we got here. What makes a recommendation eligible for us to vote on, and then the actual voting process, and then just some things to consider as you make your decision. Okay, so that's what's included here. So here are the phases of just looking at all the work that we have done here at the CRC. So we're starting from the bottom up. So phase one was simply to launch the CRC Commission and for you all to develop the recommendations. And we have made really, really great progress with that. So we are now moving into phase two, where you all will begin voting on which recommendations to move forward to the city council and county commissioners to consider, okay? Phase three would be once you all have voted on all recommendations, whether you choose to move them forward or not, then those government entities will then consider and vote on which recommendations that you all have, that have been voted on and majority of you have voted to move those forward. Only those recommendations will be considered by the city council and the county commissioners. And what they will do is then vote amongst themselves on which recommendations they would like to move forward to implement. So then once they do their voting, that would move us to phase four. Phase four is planning and implementation. And this is where the city and county will continue to work with community members. It will look a little bit different than this commission, but they made it very clear that they want to continue to work with community members to begin to develop a strategic plan to implement these recommendations that have been approved by city council and county commissioners. So we are right now at phase two. We're at the beginning of phase two. And so once we get through all of our recommendations and have voted on all of them, the ones that have been approved by majority vote will then all together at the same time, they will move on to phase three for the city, county, and county commissioners to do their voting process. Let me pause here. Does anybody have any questions about where we are and what happens? What comes next? Yes, ma'am, Tiffany.
Hello, this is Tiffany Double. I was just curious about these set of phases versus the there was the first set of phases that kind of put us at phase three. So these are just phases based on voting processes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great clarifying question. Any other questions before I move forward? Okay. So on the next slide, this is what makes a recommendation eligible to vote. One, the recommendation has been vetted by the city and county. And two, the recommendation has been presented to the CRC for awareness and feedback. So if there's a recommendation that's out there that hasn't been vetted by city or county, or that hasn't been presented to the CRC, it would not be eligible for voting until those two things happen. Once those two things happen, it can then be voted upon. Question MZ.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Number one, I don't believe the commission has ever voted on the city and the county vetting any recommendations. So I don't know how that became an eligibility criteria. And I think that should be up for the CRC to decide, as opposed to that just being implemented without CRC voting on that, actually doing a motion and voting on that as part of the process.
MZ, that's what has been happening this entire time. So all the recommendations that you have submitted to city and county, they have given feedback. So that process has already happened for recommendations. It's not something new.
I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but what I am saying is that there hasn't been a vote by the CRC as to whether that is the actual process. There's a lot that's happened that the CRC hasn't approved or even agreed to. It's just been, happening. So I'm just raising that concern. But I hear what you're saying, Ms. Venetia, but I'm just raising that concern.
Okay, MZ, thank you. We'll go to Misty, question.
There is no question. I was just confirming what you had said, that this has always been the process of the city and county. First of all, there are legal requirements. And when you get into some of the things that have been recommended, they are not legally compliant. And that is a concern. And the other thing is that the city and the county are authorities which have the ability to fund, so they can call the shots any way that they want to. And then they have a duty and a public obligation to vote on whatever is submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. Ms. Renata.
She was just saying she cannot hear anything. So, with the audio.
Okay.
She might need to go out and come back in, because I think it might be on her end.
Okay. Can we maybe message her? Okay. MZ, do you have another question?
Yes. The second part to the question is the amount of time the city and the county takes to review any of the recommendations. I'm not against the city and the county reviewing it, but my concern is the amount of time taken to review proposals that come through the commission. I do have concerns about the idea of vetting, because it's a community effort, it's a community initiative. But the second part of that is the amount of time. Is there time specified? I know that the city and the county are in all of our meetings, so why couldn't any recommendations come at those meetings as opposed to a separate process that takes however amount of time desired? So I want there to be a specification. If the committee does vote and say that this is part of the process, what is the amount of time that is allotted for this? I think Tiffany brought it up at the last meeting. I wasn't there, but I watched the video. But that's just another thought that I wanted to put in there as well.
Okay, thank you, MZ. Does anyone from the city county want to address that?
I can address that. Thank you, MZ. So I will let you know that we understand that at the beginning of the process, it was rocky, right? We were figuring out the process as we were moving it forward. As these recommendations are coming in now, we are working to get them done as quickly as possible. We understand that there is a sense of urgency and that you all need your feedback as quickly as possible. So the city and the county, I can't give you like a definitive deadline, but I am telling you that we are working very hard to get those looked at and back to you all as soon as possible. We understand that there's a sense of urgency that you all need to get those back as quickly as possible. And so we are not trying to hold anything up. We are asking, the other part of that is we are asking that when we request that you all send things in, that is also sent to us in a timely manner, because we can only get it back to you as quickly as you get it to us. So I think it kind of works both ways, but you've been heard, and we definitely are working expeditiously to get those back to you as soon as possible.
Thank you, Salah.
Thank you.
Jesse Ray, can you just give us a simplified definition of what the vetting is?
Yes, sir. This is what the city and county has been doing, which is simply giving feedback. They have read over the recommendations and then giving you all feedback and then return them to you.
Okay. Does that feedback include making changes to the recommendations?
It's whatever they have already done, Mr. Ray. So although the recommendations that you all have submitted to them and then they return back to you, that's what that means. This is just simply what they have already done.
And I can clarify, Mr. Ray, or respond to your question about making changes. They are not making changes. So when you receive your feedback, it is maybe a recommendation of how this recommendation can be written more specifically, or a way, for example, I'll give you one from housing that we shared with legal about returning land immediately that was taken during urban renewal. And so what we got back from our attorneys was that we can put that recommendation forward, but there were some things that would have to be in place. So I could not go back to an individual unless it was the individual that was originally taken from. And there were some other things, some other bullet points beneath that, right, to tell us it can be done, but these are the ways that it can be done. We can either, when you get that feedback, you can either take that feedback and apply it into your recommendation or not. It's just saying, here's a way that you can probably move this recommendation forward. The feedback is not to say that you have to do it that way. It's just a recommendation. And then within your respective IFAs, you can take that information and use it as you will or not use it.
Okay. Does that help? Okay, perfect. Dawana and then Dee.
I was wondering, Miss Renata Kanya's question. When will the city and county have final say on the recommendations? Like once we submit them, I'm assuming this is how she's meaning. Once it's submitted, when will we hear the final say on the recommendations?
Salah, I will turn that to you.
Yeah, so there's not a definitive date. Like there's no hard deadline as to when they will have them back to you. So you all will, again, as Bernicia said at the beginning of her presentation, there won't be, I'll give an example of this evening. There's 4 recommendations on the agenda to be voted on. So we're not going to take those 4 once they're voted on. If you move those 4, then take those to the city council and the commissioners to look at. We're going to wait till every single recommendation that you guys are bringing forward has been voted on, and then we'll take that slew of recommendations and they'll go to the city and to the county to be voted on at one time. And so,
I'm sorry, what is the deadline for everybody? I'm sorry, what is the deadline for all the recommendations to be in for the city and county to work on?
So we're working on that June 17th is the last meeting that we have on record right now of the commission meeting. June 17th is that last meeting. We are hoping that you all have been able to vote on all of your recommendations by then, and then they will be submitted to both the city council and the commissioners for review.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I see Keith has his hand on. Mr. Young?
Yes. So just want to clarify, there is no hard deadline for city and county officials to get back to us, but there is a hard deadline for us to stop when we ask for more time to get this done. What are the chances that there are going to be enough city council meetings and county commission meetings in between the time period prior to June 17th? Not many, because there's only 2 a month, and we know what meetings they have left scheduled. What are we doing here? Can we be very transparent? Because if we have a hard stop deadline of June 17th and they don't have a deadline to get back to us, and it's not appearing on, we don't have any recommendations for them today. We might have some officially voted on. it's not, this is frustrating. This is frustrating to say the least. We got a hard stop deadline at June 17th. And we all know that there aren't but a couple of council meetings and county commission meetings before then. That means they have to get this information, get it on the agenda, digest this information prior to that. The math ain't mathing. I don't know how they're going to get back in contact with us. We need more time. I don't know why we keep saying that. And, you know, if they know you're going to give us more time, then give us more time so we'll know. But don't play this cat and mouse game like you want us to work our butts off like we've been doing, and we behind the 8 ball. And it just does not make sense at all.
Thank you, Keith. And I hear and I can understand your frustration. I'm not saying, so when I say June the 17th, that is the last meeting that we have on the calendar. I'm not saying that that is the last meeting that we will have. Again, I go back to the checkpoint, and I know that the language of the checkpoint does not always land the way I think people need for it to land. But right now on our calendar, our last meeting is June the 17th. And I'm not saying that that's the hard deadline to get them in, but I am saying that that's the deadline that we're working from at this moment. That could change. I'm not sure if that's going to change or not. Again, we need to be able to come up with something to show the county or I'm going to say city council where we are, what we've done, and what needs to be done with regards to if you're going to ask for an extension past that June 17th date. So
one more time, and I'm not going to beat the dead horse to death because this horse been dead for a while now. But what I will say is that the process was changed early on. We had short, medium, and long-term goals, recommendations that we thought we were going to be given early on. So we wouldn't get to this point. Like it feels like we're being set up. You know, the process originally was short, medium, and long-term goals, recommendations, and it got changed to now we just want all of them and give it to us all at once. And now what we're doing is we're behind the 8 ball right now. It's like you want all of them at once, and now we don't have the time to even get the feedback back from what the city and the county want to do with these recommendations. So before we vote on all this stuff today, I will implore every commissioner, it is not incumbent upon us to really deny any IFA their recommendations. I'm personally at the point where I'm for everything. I don't care what you put out there. I'm for everything. It's not for us to shoot ourselves in the foot. So I hope people will follow suit in all of these recommendations that come forward today or whenever we get there, that we approve all of them, because there ain't no guarantee that we're going to be back here saying anything. Like, I don't even know how many people working to help you, Salah. I know Ms. Crawford is doing her contractual duties, but I mean, I don't even know how much help you got.
So I'm going to speak to the date of June 17th and the recommendations moving forward. The recommendations will go to council after the 17th day. So we're not submitting them. I don't want you all to feel like you have to submit them right now. That's not what we're saying. They will go to council after June 17th.
Okay. I'm going to reel us back in to make sure that we do get to what is on our agenda. I do see Miss Tiffany's hand up. Miss Tiffany, do you have a question?
Yes, my question is pertaining to voting for alternates. So do we have a process for that? Because we do have a significant amount of commission members that are not present. So how would alternates be able to vote in the absence of commission members?
I am going to defer that to Brad, because I believe early on we determined that alternates could not vote, Tiffany. And so, but I will defer that to our legal team, either Brad or Fu, please.
Thank you, Salah. I can take a stab at answering that question. So, as you mentioned, Salah, there was a vote early on in the commission's process to allow all of the alternates to participate actively in the discussions. However, at this point, only members that have been appointed by the city council or the county commission are voting members. Neither city council or city staff have the ability to move forward and alter what those two public bodies set up as a 25-member commission. So at this point, we don't have the legal authority under either of those appointment processes to give the alternate members the ability to vote. Now, if, and this has certainly happened, if any members exit the commission, then an alternate will take that seat and they will have full voting rights. But until that point, only those members appointed by one of the two bodies are officially members with voting power.
So lastly to that, and thank you, Brad and Salah. Lastly to that, we do have, and I know that we are in phase 2 of voting and we only have 4 phases. We do have another amount of commission members who still have not been present or actively participating. So how would I go about that as far as being able to vote as an alternate who's been here since the beginning?
So, if you don't mind, I can try to jump in again. Until, if a member is not participating, as long as they are still an appointed member, we don't have the ability to remove them. Only the appointing authority has that ability, which again is either the city council or the county commission. So if there is an individual or individuals who you feel like are no longer part of the commission process, you would have to reach out to one of the two governing bodies to take action to elevate a alternate member to one of those seats.
Thank you.
Brad, question. This is the one. And could that not, so, and maybe this for Salah. So I think we're down to 23 members outside of the alternates, right? According to the roll call sheet. So could we not vote for those 2 spaces to be filled by alternates, and then that'll be something that the staff would present to city or county, or like what's the process for getting those 2 spots? Because we do have members who have been alternates who show up at every meeting. You know what I mean? So how do we elevate those members to the process when we already done had 2 vacancies for a while now? I'm just asking us a question.
Brad, can I add something? I don't know if you're going to respond, Brad, but I want to add something. So I know that we had a commissioner who resigned about a month or so ago and was appointed by the city. So the city is in the process of replacing that person who resigned, who was a voting member. I can't speak to whom that might be, but they are in the process of doing that. So one of the alternates should be pulled up into a voting member.
Okay. All right. Okay. Do we have any other comments or questions before we move forward? Okay. All right, you all. So we will continue on with the voting pre-process. So this is what we asked you all to do in our last meeting. We said CRC members were told to select the recommendations that they are ready to vote on and share with their IFA group leaders. From there, the IFA group leaders were asked to share those recommendations with city, county staff, and the facilitator so that we can add those those recommendations to the agenda for voting. So this is what we asked everyone to do in our last meeting, in which you all did that. So we have 4 recommendations that have been added to the agenda. On the next slide, it will explain how the voting process will go. So we will put up a slide for the 4 recommendations that's on the docket tonight to vote on. And a first and second motion must be made. Now, before the motion, we will allow 5 to 7 minutes of discussion if there are any clarifying questions that people may have about each of the recommendations. We'll do this one at a time. So we'll go item 1. Are there any questions, clarifying questions? We did send these out for everybody to review. So that 5 to 7 minutes is just for clarifying questions, okay? Once a first and second motion is made to vote, the voting will then be completed by roll call. So I believe Salah or Dewana will call out each of your names to say one of the following statements. And this is just a short version, but a longer version is I support this recommendation moving forward, or I do not support this recommendation moving forward. Majority vote will pass, and then we will continue to repeat this process until all recommendations have been voted on. Tonight we have 4, so we'll just continue to do this until all 4 has been voted on. And again, this is just a reminder, once the CRC gets through all of their recommendations, and you have all voted on all of the recommendations, that is when we will then pass them on to city and county. Thank you, Asadu. Okay, so here's some things that we want you all to think about, or not we want you to think about, but here are just some things to consider when you are making your vote. One, is the recommendation feasible? Does it address the harm? And will it have the great impact or the desired impact that you would like? When I spoke with city and county folks earlier this week and last week, I asked them, what do they take into consideration when they make their, when they vote? And some of the things that they said was the availability of resources, which could include staff time and staff availability to work on certain projects. Also budget, the cost of things, data to support recommendations, as well as the impact it would have. So these are just a few things. These are not all the things that they consider, but these were just a few things. I thought it was a fair question to pick their brain to consider, to think about what they consider when they are going through their voting process as well. So here are the voting items for tonight. So the first item is the Economic Development Center. The second is guaranteed income. The third is existing community initiatives and infrastructure. And the fourth is Reparations Accountability Council. So what will happen is we will click on the recommendation so you can just view it. We'll have 5 to 7 minutes for any clarifying questions. And then once a first and second motion is made, we will then do a roll call. Okay. We did have a quick activity to kind of help you all kind of just get into the mindset of voting, but I think, Salah, we might have utilized a little bit too much of our time to go through that activity.
Can I ask a question? Do you think that you had a purpose for initiating it? Would it be helpful to the group, not wanting to step on the time element, but did you think that you had initially wanted it to be a part of things because you thought it would be helpful? And if it would be helpful, why would we bypass it?
I thought it would be helpful.
And I'm okay with us moving forward. I think, yeah.
Okay. So, okay. Do you want me to share my screen?
Yes, if you're able to.
Okay. So you all, thank you, Mr. Dwayne. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to drop a link in the chat. This is just an activity, you all, to kind of help us get into the mindset of voting. This link is going to take you to a screen, and on this screen, it has all the one-liner recommendations that was on the community engagement tool. And you would just see 2 options. Which is I do not support the recommendation to move forward, and I support the recommendation to move forward. That's it. So this is just to get your mind into making a decision on one on these recommendations. So when I share my screen, we will be able to see in real time how people are voting. Now, this is completely anonymous, okay? And so if you click on that and you just click, I can see how many people in the bottom right corner here is actually participating. Okay, so for those who can, you'll just read the statement and you will make a selection. Okay. We have 4 folks, and we'll give you all a few minutes. And we won't get through all, it's like 39 recommendations in here. This is just an activity to kind of, exercise our decision-making skills. That's all this is. We're not doing anything with this data, but this just gives you a visual of where folks are as well. Okay, we have 5 folks. Mr. Asandu, go ahead. Okay. Great. And we'll just go through a couple of these. Okay, so right now we have 7 folks who have participated. 14, I believe, is the special number, right, Salah and Dawana? Is there anyone having trouble accessing this link?
I am.
Dwayne,
This is Mildred Nance Carson.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
This is Mildred Nance Carson. I'm having some difficulty,
Okay,
and I apologize.
no problem.
Dwayne Richardson, I'm not sure if I'm having difficulty or not, because when I try to click on it, it is offering to enlarge the screen.
Okay,
And so I don't think that's a vote.
I don't think that's a vote, Mr. Richardson. Okay, do you want to refresh your page and see what happens?
Okay, let's try.
All right, I'm seeing likes and votes, so that's good. Okay, there we go. We're getting there. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna move to the next one. Again, this is the same process. So if you wasn't able to engage on this one, that's okay, you have another shot. The most important thing is to practice reading these recommendations as they are and just kind of taking an assessment of how you feel about it right now and as it is, okay? So I'm gonna move to the next one here. Okay. In the top left, you'll see the IFA focus area. So this is housing focus area. Okay. Have some votes coming in. Thank you all. Some of you are liking and some of you are voting, but we'll count it. That works. Great. Thank you all. I'm going to take about 1 more minute on this one, and then we'll go to the next one. Again, this is just an activity for us to practice, that's all. Alrighty. Good. Okay. All right. We will go on to the next one. There we go. Oops. Hopefully over here. All right. Okay, so this will be the last one. Then just practice. We'll let one more minute go by here. Okay. So as you can see, y'all, we have 36 people on the call. We want to have 14 people voting. So during this next process, it's why the verbal voting is so important. So what we're doing right here is anonymous. We don't know who's voting which way. And this is just an activity to get you to decide I support, I do not support, and also to kind of stress how important is this verbal the verbal voting process is. So we'll have to be able to track who said what and who voted which way for this process. Okay. So you all, Ms. Richardson, I don't know if this is helpful, but I thought it would be. So I'm going to stop presenting now.
I just want to err on the side of not worrying about the clock so much as the knowledge.
Okay. Thank you. Received. Okay. So with that said, we are going to go ahead and move into the voting process. Does anybody have any questions? Is everybody clear about what's about to happen? Yes, ma'am. D. You are muted.
Please excuse me.
You're muted again, D.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I was just going to ask about some of the portions that may have legal implications on them, such as, I don't know, there's one with guaranteed income. We kind of vetted that and got outvoted. Some of us who were concerned about that. Will there be feedback from city staff, even if we vote for that? Because it looks like what you're doing is taking the proposals in totality from each IFA. Is that something we can get feedback on from legal so that if there is a problem with that they can tell us how to either word it so that we can get the outcome that we want and not hold the process up? Or how is that? Do we just vote in totality and then get the feedback? Because I would really hate for city council, these legal counsel, city council and county commissioners are their clients. They're not going to tell them to vote for anything that violates the Constitution or any other ordinance that would bring legal consequences. So I'm just wondering about that. What should we do in that instance?
Salah, do you want to take that?
So Dee, the ones that you all are voting on have already been looked at by city and county. Remember, that was one of the eligibility requirements for you all to be able to vote on those, is that it had to go before city and county for a vetting process and feedback received. I'm not sure what feedback was received from legal with regards to the guaranteed income proposal, and I would defer to the IFA facilitator to share that information. So I'm not sure if Tara can respond to that or not.
Was there a specific recommendation you were referring to, Dee?
The guaranteed income, she stated. You're muted, Dee.
Sorry, it was
you keep
flipping back for urban renewal land. And the city and county attorney did bring up that there was a statute in effect that it had to be, if it were forwarded back, it had to be at market rates. I think, market rates is not something, they're not going to be granted this land. I guess that's what I'm really referring to, rather than, because Durham has enacted the direct payments. I'm talking about the urban renewal land, of getting that back. Because I don't see any reference to it being market rates in there. Or is that just inferred? I was confused, because there is a statute that says that they cannot be granted that land back. It has to be bought back at market rate by whatever heirs. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think what you're bringing up is seeing the recommendations in that way on the Minty. Those are just the one-liners. If you will have access to those recommendations, like the full recommendation, which I hope would cover some of the questions that you're asking before we vote on them. That one isn't on the docket for tonight. There's just 4. So we can shift our attention to the 4. However, when those other ones come up and there's questions, I think that would be a great time to ask those questions. Okay. All right, you all. We will go ahead and begin this process. And Salah, if you want to go ahead and share screen again. This is our first recommendation from Economic Development. The name of the recommendation is the Economic Development Center and Commercial Districts. So again, this was sent out for you all to review in advance. Tara is asking, can we zoom in more?
I'm going to do my best.
All right, and so we're going to open up the floor for about 5 to 7 minutes for folks to ask questions, any clarifying questions about this recommendation. And after that time is up, we will then call for a motion to vote. And these questions should be answered by the IFA group facilitator and the IFA group members.
Salah, can you scroll up, please?
I will also drop this link in the chat as well for you all.
Can this be enlarged a little? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just a quick time check. We have about 4 more minutes remaining to review or ask any questions.
Are we good with, did anyone miss anything? Do I need to go back?
Hello.
Ms. Norma, do you have a question?
No, my phone is acting up, so I'm not hearing everything, and I've been in and out trying to keep up with everything. So the connection I have is not too good.
Okay.
So
Well, thank you for letting us.
hopefully I can understand, what we're doing here. Mhm.
Right now, we are reviewing, we just opening up space for people to ask questions about the economic development, their recommendation for the Economic Development Center and commercial districts. So we just are giving space for anyone who has questions. But it doesn't seem like anyone does. So that means that the next step would be for there to be a first motion and a second motion to vote on this recommendation. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to support the Economic Development Center and commercial districts. This is Keith Young.
Thank you, Keith. Do we have a second?
I second it. Dwayne Richardson.
So we have a second from a first from Keith Young and a second from Dwayne Richardson. Okay, and so we will now move into roll call. And when your name is called, you will either say I support this recommendation moving forward, or I do not support this recommendation moving forward.
All right. Norma Baines. I support the recommendation going forward. Renata Conyers.
Yes. I support the recommendations moving forward.
Christopher Gordon.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Roy Harris.
I support the recommendation.
Dewana Little. I support the recommendation moving forward. Babette Mays.
I support this recommendation moving forward.
Dwight Mullen.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Mildred Nance Carson. Mildred Nance Carson. Osandu McPeters,
Hello, this is
Dwayne.
Mildred Nance Carson. I
All right.
support. I apologize. I'm having some trouble.
Okay, got you. Osandu McPeters.
Duane, I think he had to hop off. He was on a flight.
Okay. Dwayne Richardson.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Raynita Waters.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
D. Williams.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
MZ Yehuda.
Support the recommendation moving forward.
Keith Young.
I support the recommendation and all the others.
All right.
Dewana, this is CC Weston. I support the recommendation moving forward.
All right. I got you. And so we have we have 13 yeses. Are there any that are opposed? Any withstanding? We have 13 yeses. The motion moves forward.
All right, y'all. Congratulations. Yay. Okay. Are y'all ready to move forward with the rest of the voting? You guys have just passed your first official recommendation from an IFA group. So congratulations. This is great. Hopefully the next few rounds will go a little bit quicker now that we've practiced. So here we go. The second one up is from the Economic Development Group, and it is Guaranteed Income Pilot Program. We'll give 3 minutes just because no one had any questions on the last one. And again, you all had these before to read in advance. I'll still drop it, the link to this document in the chat. But yeah, we'll give 3 minutes for if y'all have any clarifying questions that you want to ask to the IFA group leaders and members.
Are we doing 3 or 5 minutes for this one?
Do you believe you need 5? I said 3.
Okay.
The link is in the chat if you need to view it on your own. Give about 3 minutes. I'm not bound to the 3 minutes. The 3 minutes is for you all. Delana, question. Yes.
Just a small question. As I read this, it maybe it's just the wording. And as I read this, I'm like, when it gets down to the second paragraph right here, and I know in the context of reparations, we were talking specifically to Black people, but it's the way it reads, it just, I guess one of my biggest concerns, like as we make these recommendations, is the minority label, low income or minority label being placed on it. And then people who are not Black benefiting more from it than the people who are Black and we are actually referring to. And so that's why I'm kind of like, I just wonder about the wording, and I'm not on that committee, so I guess I would want to understand. I just would love to see something a little bit specific with Black in there to be intentional, because we have historical reference to why broadness makes it could be a negative to Black people.
Does anybody from the IFA group want to speak to that?
I think that that's one of those things that in many ways, Dwayne Richardson, I'm sorry, from Economic Development. I think that we could offer our thoughts on it, and but I think that this may be a moment where legal could speak more directly to it, and I feel that Dee may have some thoughts that would speak to it, but I think that it is primarily from a legal perspective that the language was as vague, if you will. I know that we know, but we also, just as Dewana has said, there have been times when vague language has led to exclusion. So I think that legal might be, we should call on them here to speak to that for us.
Perfect. Dee, do you want to chime in before we allow legal to speak?
I wish legal, thank you. I wish legal had spoken on this before. The thing that Durham did was to target it specifically to a set of data that involved justice-involved individuals. And as you all know, that is disproportionately Black people, without giving direct reference to them. You cannot make it exclusive only to Black people. But when you see a data set where people of color are involved more than any others, that is why Durham most wisely went with that rather than the Black designation. So that is what I was speaking of that had concerned me. I think we can pass all the things we want to, but when it comes to city and county commissioners, their legal counsels, as they're sitting here tonight, Mr. Frew and Mr. Branhams respectively, are going to tell their clients that that word designating only Black people or the reference to is a violation of the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause. So I think you may need to designate a specific group that's been harmed, and that if it's that justice-involved individuals without reference to color. So that's my input, and that was my concern. Thank you.
Well, I would like to go back and say, is this a moment where they could speak directly at this time?
Yes.
Well, Michael Frew here. I'll try to pitch in. I do know, I agree with the way Dee phrased it and the way Durham phrased their language for justice-involved individuals and tried to leave it a little vague. I do know that we did a good bit of research as to what the city of Durham did for this program. This isn't city of Durham taxpayer money for the program. The program was funded from private source, and I don't remember what the private source was. It might have been one of those Research Triangle Park institutes like SAS Institute, for instance. But this could pose some challenges, and we'd have to wait to see how the City Council or the Board of Commissioners would like to move this proposal forward if it's passed by this commission and is approved by the city and the county. And I honestly don't know how they might prioritize or want to move this forward. But I do know that as written, the problem would be public funding, and the solution could be private source of funding, which is the 501c3 conversation that we've had a number of times.
Thank you, Mr. Frew. Okay, any other questions regarding this recommendation?
Salah, can you scroll back up to the top, please? No, just right in there. Thank you.
Dewana, I do just want to say also in response to your comment this language, the first sentence in the second paragraph, the reparations accountability entity, along with the city and county, should determine the parameters of a program, is getting to that ongoing question of what is legally possible and most meets the goals of the Reparations Commission. So I hear you, personally agree with you. And if that language needs to be stronger, we can work on that. But that was the goal of that phrase, was that the entity coming out of this should work on the program parameters.
I do have a comment. It's that, and it's not a counterpoint, it's an additional point, is that it's also completely within legal parameters to counter a negative discrimination with a positive discrimination. And so the idea of monitoring the outcomes of this proposal, if it's implemented, I think is totally appropriate to see if it's adequate in addressing the needs and reparation parameters of the Black community. I refuse to accept that talking about Black folk is unconstitutional.
Thank you, Dr. Mullen. Cece Weston.
I agree with you, Dr. Mullen. And my question would be, can it not be directly tied to the resolution that the city and county both put out? Because in the resolutions, they specifically mentioned Black people.
Thank you, Cece. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, do we have a first and second motion?
I make a motion that we support the Guaranteed Income Pilot Program. This is Keith Young.
Do we have a second?
This is Cece Weston. I second.
Cece? Dewana, over to you. Dewana, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay. All right, roll call.
This time I am going to call people who were not originally present because they might be now. So, all right. Dwayne Barton. Norma Baines.
I vote that I vote on the recommendation that it goes forward.
Renata
Did you hear me?
Yes, we did. Thank you.
Okay.
I vote on the recommendation. We move forward.
Christopher Gordon.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Roy Harris.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Shonda Jackson. Kimberly Jones. Dewana Little. I support the recommendation moving forward. Dwayne McAfee. Babette Mays.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Glenda McDowell. Tamara Miller. Dwight Mullen.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Mildred Nance Carson.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Osandu McPeters. Thomas Priesta. Dwayne Richardson.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Eric Robinson, Raynita Waters,
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Cece Weston,
I support the recommendation moving forward.
D. Williams,
I support the recommendation, and I hopefully legal staff will peruse and advise.
MZ Yehuda,
I support the economic development and I support the recommendation moving forward.
Keith Young.
I support the recommendation and all the others.
All right. We have 14 yeses and it moves forward.
All right. Yay. Okay. Congratulations again, y'all. Let's keep going. Salah, do you mind sharing your screen one more time? The next recommendation is the, oops, oh, where is it? Okay. This is existing community initiatives and infrastructure. This is with the, which IFA is this, Salah?
That's economic development as well.
It's still economic development. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Apologies. So this is another economic development recommendation, existing communities, initiatives, and infrastructure. I will also drop the link to this one in the chat for you. And if there are any clarifying questions, we'll give time and space for that.
Joanna, you have a question?
Yes, so with this recommendation, like my main concern is that most of the legacy neighborhoods that this speaks to of receiving a $250,000 grant has been drastically gentrified. And so my concern is giving reparations money meant for Black people to predominantly white communities. Now, I understand the historical context in which this was referenced, but I also understand the dynamics now, and those neighborhoods are no longer Black. And so to put so much emphasis on legacy neighborhoods and $250,000, it's uncomfortable for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, to even consider giving neighborhoods that we know are predominantly white now access to reparations money that's geared towards Black people. And when I talked to some of some of the association members of those communities about this recommendation specifically, they was like, but it's only all of us left over here. You know what I mean? Like $250,000, our neighborhoods are predominantly white, and they had other ideas of what would be a better use for those funds. And so my concern is giving predominantly white spaces Black reparations money that was geared towards Black people. And so I asked for the demographics of those communities several times throughout these meetings over the 2 years. And so I think we really need to consider that and what that looks like and implies, especially when we're referencing six communities. You know what I mean? And 70% of housing is Black. Do you understand? Like, I hope that makes sense. And so I'm just concerned overall with their perspective. I do know that Southside still has a huge Black community. Northside's Black community has dwindled. I'm actually from North. And you know what I mean? Like, just being realistic. I know Burton Street still has a strong Black community, but it's like in Shallow, you know what I mean? But for the most part, I think it's a better way to do what's trying to be accomplished with this recommendation, and not just a broad stroke of all legacy communities. You know what I mean? I think it's a better way to be intentional about those funds, because that's a lot of money.
Tara, do you have a response to Dewana?
Yes, I'm happy to let Dee go. If you don't mind scrolling up to the top, though, Dee might be about to say this, but I did want to note that it does say provide grants to legacy neighborhoods and public housing communities. But go ahead, Dee.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And basically, I want to just supply some data. One of the things that you need to know is that Burton Street has been gentrified totally. They're not even allowed to tap into environmental racism grants from the North Carolina Department of Transportation because they no longer fit the income guidelines. So gentrification or no, what we're providing is the fact that most of these legacy neighborhoods that do have a plan were granted one by the city of Asheville, but they never had funds to fund themselves. So if you're going to start disqualifying, we can start disqualifying Burton Street right now. If that's what you're basing it upon, is gentrification, because it was an overt act that was committed by white folks to move Black folks out of their communities. These neighborhoods, even though we've been displaced, and it's all economic, because we couldn't keep the taxes up and all of that. So all these things you see under Burton Street no longer exists as a Black neighborhood by virtue of the data from the NCDOT. So if we're going to be factual about something, then we need to be factual about it. The other thing is that these neighborhoods, when they were intact, were places that Black people never benefited from. And if they want to turn their dollars over to another neighborhood group like Shiloh or Southside or even Burton Street, they can. But it's solely for the purposes of providing some planning dollars in there. And these plans of 12 and 15 years old that the city condoned, and they had no funds to fund them with. So I'm hoping that the people who live in these legacy Black communities can take control of their destinies, including Burton Street, and determine what they should have. And that is basically what this is. And I understand, Dewana, where you're coming from, because I lived in North Side too. And I know what happened. It's been gentrified, but South Side's being gentrified too. But we know if we're going to use data, real data, Burton Street is also disqualified. So I don't know how you want to vote for that. If you're going to use real data, then you need to disqualify them all, other than where the concentration of public housing is in Southside. We also have cash flow data to support that. There's never been a plan. A lot of this stuff has been delayed so long, it's just deliberate to obliterate these neighborhoods. So that's all I'm going to say. I try not to be too attached to it because I understand the purposefulness of what has happened here. And it has been absolutely effective because we've destroyed everything that we've got, including all of our commercial districts and residential neighborhoods per se. But if that's the way y'all want to do it, do whatever you want. Thanks.
Thank you, Dee. Dewana, follow-up question?
Yeah, so let me frame my question in a better way. Oh, go ahead, Ms. Baines. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say something. I'm from the shallow community, and we have strived very hard to make sure that our communities stay intact from generations to come. It's true that it has been gentrified, but there's still a lot of Afro-American people still living there, and we want to encourage even more of them to come back to our neighborhood. That's what we're trying to do, and that's what we're striving to do. And if you look at our 2025 plan and all the things that we've been doing over the last 24 years, is to better our neighborhood and make sure that Afro-Americans have a neighborhood, a historical neighborhood that they can come to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baines. Dawana, last question here, and then we will move forward here. Oh, well, one more, Dr. Mullen. Go ahead, Dawana.
So I just want to clarify, and I definitely respect what you said, Dee. But my question is, if we know that these specific, or however you want to say it, these communities have been gentrified, and so they are predominantly there is limited or little Black presence in these communities. I guess it's the $250,000 per community that's throwing off the conversation for me, because it's like, if we know that, I could see a pool, I'm just looking for a different way to do it, so that, like, shallow community, like Miss Baines said, and these other communities have access to resources, or these community groups within these gentrified communities, you know what I mean, have access to resources, but it's not so specific per community. And maybe that would kind of bring it in, because like I just in my mind cannot connect giving predominantly white neighborhoods $250,000 for a handful of, you know what I mean, of Black people. So maybe that's what's throwing me off, and it wasn't to say what neighborhood should qualify or be disqualified. I'm just saying, I just needed to make sense in my head and understanding like what we are at this table for.
Well, you're gonna have to put Burton Street on that list too, because the North Carolina Department of Transportation just disqualified them from receiving any funds for, and I wish Dwayne was here, but we had a meeting with them in our IFA, and the leader of that pretty much had all the economic data, and they are also disqualified. So if you're gonna disqualify these, what you probably need to do, and I try to be a very positive person, and I try to use data to guide all of that as well, is that you can say up to $250,000 with oversight and a review of the neighborhood plans and the feasibility analysis of getting this stuff done. But right now, Shiloh and probably East End is bordering on the brink. That is how rapidly these neighborhoods are gentrifying. But Burton Street is also excluded right now. DOT cut them off just because of that. So you need to be aware of that data. I would say to you that there's a way to do it, but it has to be up to the limit of $250,000. Now, these neighborhoods have plans in, including Burton Street. And you know, Mr. Barton is a leader in that. And he is a member of the Economic Development IFA. And he is carrying forward with some of those plans. So I would say to you that these neighborhood plans that Black communities had have never been brought to fruition, never, because they never had funding. And so it well aligns with the city's purpose of setting up and carrying out these neighborhood plans. Now in North Asheville, and I came from Cornelia Street off of Madison Avenue and Hillside myself, so I know the one where you're talking about. But it just comes from the Chestnut Hills, as y'all want to call it. But you have you have a group that has been appointed by Buncombe County Commissioners that you call Chestnut Hills. I believe Ms. Conyers is a part of that, and some other people. So they're still recognized as a legacy Black neighborhood. I think it does bear some conversation and some limits, and also it would bear you putting together a sagacious group, a review group, to look at what they would propose, because Those $250,000 are not appropriate for every community group, but certainly they have the resources if they want to do something in that neighborhood. So that's all I've got to say. I don't want to monopolize. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. And I just want to make note, this is a very rich conversation and I don't want to disrupt it, Mr. Richardson. And I do see Tara's comment. So I just want to post to the group. We do have one more item to vote on as well as a community engagement update. Are we okay with spending an additional 5 minutes here on this discussion?
My comment will be quick.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump in because I was waiting patiently. And so my statement is based on California, and Dr. Mullen can speak to this as well, but California came to a point where they were forced to try and decide who should receive, who was eligible, who should be able to receive reparations funding. And invariably, we're going to be confronted with that same decision to make. And so I think that at some point or another, when we're going to reach a point to where we will have to decide who the funds can go to and who they cannot go to. And I think that the concerns that have been brought about by the gentrification of our historically Black neighborhoods, I think that will be a time where we will have to make some decisions about who is eligible and who will be able to receive funding. And I think we have to include that in our conversation.
And let me agree with you on that, and as well as with the earlier comments. But this whole discussion illustrates the absurdity of not talking about Blackness. We have got to talk about race as we address reparations. And in this case, we're looking at the harm done to a community, not necessarily the harm done to individuals. And that is a dynamic process that's happening as we speak. And so the application for these funds should be a dynamic application that meets certain criteria that include the historic nature of what we're addressing, but it also includes the current demographic makeup, as well as whatever standards that review body comes up with on its own. Because I think with a little deeper thinking, they'll come up with their own standards. So I am not amending this proposal at all. I'm suggesting that if we accept this, it's with an addendum that the application process is a dynamic review process that has criteria that are clear, that meet the demands of reparations for Black people.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Mullen. I do want to bring attention to Tara's comment, and it's also highlighted here on the screen. That the last sentence says, determining the vision and the use of the grant fund should center Black residents of each community. So it is time for us to put a motion on the table.
I think Dewana had a hand up just a second ago.
Oh, did I miss that? I'm sorry.
Courtney, so I really think this one deserves more conversation. But I will proceed however the commission wants to proceed. But I definitely think I don't want to leave loopholes. You know what I mean? I think one thing is that this goes to city and county. They're responsible, as we've been told over the last 3 or 4 meetings, for the implementation and how this works. And so I just want us to be real intentional about what we present, especially in reference to this, because I think of 250,000, say 6 legacy communities, over $1 million, you know what I mean? And funding that this proposal will require, and it's a concern. I'm super concerned about this one. So I'm gonna just leave it there. I see Babette's hands raised. Go ahead, Babette.
This will be the last comment, and then I have a statement to make for you all.
Okay, my thought is that really when you look at the work that like communities do, the work that's been done in East End and in Shiloh, $250,000 is not really a lot of money in this day and time if you're really doing the work. It's really not a lot. Gentrification is across the board. The only thing I didn't like was the example of just Burton Street, where they had the examples of what they're going to be doing, the examples of what that would entail. I thought that throws people off. And when we start to read, we don't go all the way down to read the little small parts of it. And I think that if we did anything, I would rather have that taken out, because what people see is that it's just focusing on Burton Street. I mean, I don't have a problem with the things that you want to do, but when you're inclusive to your own neighborhood, which is not really something that I would like, because you're talking about all the legacy neighborhoods, I just don't think it's fair. When you come across gentrification, that's across the board, but the neighborhoods that are doing, the legacy neighborhoods that are doing the work, they're doing the work for our people. Now, if anybody else comes along, that's fine, but we're doing it for what we're doing for our people. And I'll give an example. Shiloh wants to get a resource centers for education. We have a summer camp and an after school program. We don't limit it just to Black people, but it's served for people that may not be able to afford what summer camp would be. So we have those kind of areas going on. So I don't want to get caught up in it, because really $250,000 in this day and time is not a lot of money. Believe me, once you start spending on what you need to, it's not a lot. And people doing the work, you have to. But I would really, the only oppose I would have, I just don't like the fact that you put in here your examples of Burton Street, and it might look like that might be the only community that's doing anything.
Thank you, Miss Mays. I do want to share, so that we do have to move forward with the vote because it is on the docket. However, I just want to share with you all, if something doesn't pass when you vote, that doesn't mean that it can't be readjusted and then voted on again. However, if that's the case, so for example, if this recommendation does not pass tonight, we still have to get through all the other recommendations before we can vote on this one again, to be fair to all the other IFA groups and the recommendations. So do we have a first and second?
I have a motion. Keith Young here. I am an equal opportunity supporter, unity without uniformity, and I support the existing neighborhood plans. I make a motion that we support the existing neighborhood plans and incentive to empower historically African-American communities.
Is there?
I second that motion. This is D. Williams. Second that motion. D. Williams, please.
All right, roll call. Dewana, you're muted.
All right, here we go. Dwayne Barton. Norma Baines.
I make a motion that we pass the amendment and go forward.
There is no amendment.
Renata Conyers. Renata Conyers.
I make a motion that we move forward.
You all, just to let you know, the motion has already been made and seconded. This is just voting, so you just simply have to say I support or I do not support.
I'm sorry, I support.
Thank you.
Christopher Gordon.
I support moving this recommendation forward.
Roy Harris.
I support moving this recommendation forward.
Shonda Jackson. Kimberly Jones. Dewana Little. I do not support moving this recommendation forward. Dwayne McAfee. Babette Mays.
I do not support this recommendation moving forward.
Glenda McDowell. Tamara Miller. Dwight Mullen.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Mildred Nance Carson,
I support moving the recommendation forward.
Osandu McPeters, Thomas Priester, Dwayne Richardson,
I support moving the recommendation forward.
Eric Robinson, Raynita Waters,
I support the recommendation.
Cece Weston,
I support the recommendation moving forward.
D. Williams,
I'm so sorry. I support moving the recommendations forward, and I did not support the Burton Street only recommendations initially. So I agree with Bobette. Thanks.
MZ Yehuda,
I support moving the recommendation forward.
Keith Young.
I support the recommendation.
All right. Twelve yeses, 2 noes, the motion carries. Did y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay.
All right, Dewana, did you give the total?
Yes.
Yeah, 12 yeses, 2 noes.
Perfect, thank you. All right, you all, it is 7:42. We have one last final recommendation to vote on. We also still have community engagement to an update to give. So this last one is a recommendation from all IFA groups for the Reparations Accountability Council.
This is actually from education, if I'm not mistaken.
Excuse me, my apologies, from Education IFA Group for a Reparations Accountability Council. I will limit time here. We have 7 minutes to discuss or ask questions. Yes, ma'am, D.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. I've never seen anything set up like this where a body with no authority and not been appointed by anybody through either bylaws or an independent, not independent, but duly, I guess, authorized, that would set up what it would do to provide oversight. That is usually the duties of an lease-manary institution like a 501c3 and a board of directors that controls it. So I'm just confused whether these folks think this is something they can order this from a seat that does not give statutory authority by virtue of appointing people to a board of directors to provide oversight. I don't understand this. I've never seen this in setting up any nonprofit or 501c3. Especially when they talk about interacting with city council and county government. That is, I don't know whether it's a misunderstanding or whatever that is, but I would like to sit down with legal counsel and collect purviews on that. I don't understand it because it looks like some people have sat down and kind of expressed their wishes rather than statutory authority, and having representative folks that were designated by the Reparations Commission to this initial board of directors who would convene a organizing committee to set up a 501c3. And by the way, I do not want to be on it. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Dee. Are there any comments from the Education IFA group?
Hi, everyone. It's Maris Lavender here. To provide some clarity to the previous commentary is first, this recommendation follows the legal counsel in the past conversations that have happened in the past 2 commission meetings with the idea that there could be a 501c3 organization or an advisory council. This essentially is just a community advisory group that will hold the recommendations in place. There have been many comments about what happens after. Where do these recommendations go? Who would hold folks accountable? And we all know that it takes time to set up organizations and get things going. So this is like the next stop shop, and where some folks will go to make sure that the recommendations, the accountability to the city and the government can take place. Of course, it's not an either or situation, and so folks are able. There's a world in which there's a 501c3 organization, and this board of directors could be this advisory council that serves as a board of directors for that 501c3, and also is able to enact the recommendations and hold the city and county responsible. What we saw in the past couple meetings was that trying to make a Christmas tree bill or recommendation, as you will, where it was a 501c3 fundraising entity, and everything else in between was too much, and that it actually was advised from legal that maybe it would be better to be broken up as to 3 different entities. And that's what the education group opted to do, and take out just the accountability piece. This is just concerning how will we hold folks accountable, government bodies, local entities, with enacting the recommendations that we're setting forth. And the power comes from the people. That's what we must remember. So thank you.
Thank you, Amaris. We have 3 minutes for additional questions or comments. Mr. Young.
So just to be clear, I think the last comment Ms. Lavender said was that the power came from the people. So in reference to Ms. D. Williams' comment, they have no accountability. Like nobody's gonna acquiesce to this group any accountability. That's what it feels like. I don't want to. I don't know. Maybe legal or somebody could speak to it. I want to know how is if this is an accountability thing, how is accountability going to be held? In what way, shape, or form is power going to be acquiesced to make that happen?
Do we have comment from the legal team?
Hi, Bernicia. This is Brad Brandom. I can perhaps start this. Happy to get Michael's take as well. First thing I think I would suggest is to point the commission members back to the presentation that you provided a couple of weeks ago that included a slide or 2 specifically with legal's recommendations about this. I think I can encapsulate that by saying that there were multiple options available, and I think we had arrived at a recommendation that some sort of an independent, perhaps 501c3 nonprofit entity might be advantageous for multiple reasons, but it's not the only option. We tried to give, I think, at least 3 options to the group about how this body could be formed and would thereafter function. But we also tried to give them what we thought might be some of the better options, just in terms of the flexibility that an independent group would have, as opposed to a group that was set up by the city and the county government, that would work directly with those entities to oversee accountability. It's hard to get into too many specifics without knowing which group this commission would choose. And I don't want to presuppose or get ahead of the commission in deciding which way it wants to work, but happy to hear Michael's thoughts as well.
I don't have anything to add to that, Brad, except I do know I looked at the new recommendations that came from Maris's IFA, and I think it was broken down into 2 portions. One as a commission, the CRC appointed advisory group to move forward into the future, which would not need to be approved by either city council or the board of commissioners. And the second group which would be reviewed and approved or voted upon by the council and commission. And I'm not really sure how that second group would work, but I do think this dual approach is very doable, and it probably has a lot of benefit.
Yeah, I agree with that fully.
All right. Thank you. Can I just add that it was always, and the education group can feel free to jump in. It was always the idea that there would be more than one entity. But to the lawyer's point, that having multiple, sort of like a hydra would be advantageous, or this is a first start. And if Mr. Gordon, who I saw on the call, wanted to speak, that would be great.
Mayor, she said Mr. Gordon.
Yeah, I'm kind of put on the spot here. So yeah, I mean, yes, the whole idea was to split this when our original accountability recommendation became overbearing, and so we always thought that splitting it into a 501c3 that would be an economic development engine was one possibility. Having this council that could advise city council and the county commissioners as a group that's actually a watchdog group that's watching what they're doing, what they've implemented, and making sure that the intent and the follow through is there, because we have to have some kind of accountability there. The third piece, which Mr. Frew is talking about, that's another entity that we want to continue, but that's not in the discussion today. I just think the idea was to have a group of people appointed by the commission who would be willing and able to just watch what happens with all the recommendations that the city and county decide to implement, and make sure that they do what they say they're going to do. So that's, I mean, to me, it's rather simple.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Mr. Young, last comment here.
Yes, I'm still trying to, it feels very simple. Just really trying to wrap my brain around the actual accountability of how you hold someone accountable if they don't do something that you particularly agree with. It almost feels like putting up in the same role that local government did with the TDA. They disagree with a lot that the TDA does, but they don't have any way to affect or hold them accountable for how they spend money, whether they spend it on affordable housing or they spend it on baseball fields or whatever. It feels like a reverse situation of that. So my only question was, out of how all of these different things are broken down, the three things are broken down, where is the actual accountability? How do we, again, and I asked the attorneys to speak to it, but I didn't feel like they addressed it, in my opinion, how anyone is held accountable. Where is power seated in any portion?
Thank you.
Mr. Young, just to answer, I agree with you. I mean, the problem we have across the board is how do we as citizens hold people in power accountable? And as Dr. Lavender said, the only power we have is people power. And really the only thing we can do is if this group or some other group recognizes that the city and the county aren't doing what they said, then the people have to come out and demand that they do what they said they were going to do. I mean, we don't have any other way of holding them to their word.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. All right, you all, it is 7:54. Do we have a motion to vote?
This is CC Weston. I move that we vote on this recommendation as outlined. Yeah.
Do we have a second?
This is Keith Young, a second.
Okay. Ms. Dewana, roll call, please.
All right. Dwayne Barton. Norma Baines.
You're muted.
I'm sorry. I make a motion that we approve the amendment and go forward.
Just to vote, Ms. Baines. Do you vote to move
I
this?
approve.
All right. Renata Conyers.
I approve. We move forward.
Christopher Gordon.
I support moving this recommendation forward.
Roy Harris.
I support moving this recommendation forward.
Shonda Jackson. Kimberly Jones. Dewana Little. I support moving this recommendation forward. Dwayne McAfee. Babette Mays.
I support this recommendation moving forward.
Glenda McDowell. Tamara Miller. Dwight Mullen.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Mildred Nance Carson.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Osandu McPeters. Thomas Priester. Dwayne Richardson.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Eric Robinson. Raynita Waters.
Support the recommendation moving forward.
Cece Weston.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Dee Williams. MZ Yehuda.
I support the recommendation moving forward.
Keith Young.
As I stated before, I support the recommendation. All the others.
We have 13 yeses, and the motion carries.
All right. Thank you, Dewana. All right, you all, you have officially moved forward and voted on 4 of your recommendations. This deserves a celebration. I wish we were in person, but we're virtual. So I'm just going to give you guys a round of applause. It is 7:58, so we do not have time to review community engagement. So we are going to move that to our agenda for our next meeting next week, which is in person. Salah, do we have any public comment?
I was just checking with Sam via email to see if we had any public comment. Okay, thank you, Sam.
All right, thank you, Sam. All right, you all. So I believe if we go back to our objectives, city and county updates, we completed our voting process. We reviewed and we did vote and approve 4 of our recommendations. We didn't get to our 3rd objective, which is the community engagement update, but we will move that to our next meeting in person on May 13th. Dewana, do you have any final comments here?
Yes, I would definitely want to thank everyone who came out and supported the Jamboree, and we will talk more about it at our next meeting. And those who are part of the Community Engagement Committee, we will be meeting this Thursday, and I look forward to seeing all of those for that fruitful conversation. Thank you all. We got 4 of them, and so I am so proud of y'all. So,
thank you, Dewana. MZ is shouting Mr. Harris out. He says, "You looking good, young man." So with that said, you all,
can I say one thing right quick?
Yes, go ahead, Miss Renata.
So I misplaced a bag, and I don't know if anybody's seen a bag. It's a green and white bag, and I don't know if I picked it up. When I got home, it was gone. So I don't know if anybody's seen one there. I had lost about $2,000 worth, but hey, it's okay. the bag's kind of more important, but the other stuff's more important too. So if anybody's seen a greener bag or know anybody that might have picked it up, I'd appreciate it. So
Thank you.
Is this from the last meeting, Renata?
this was from the Jubilee Jamboree. I mean, the Reparations Jamboree.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Renata. Mr. Harris, did you have a comment before we close out?
So next Monday, we're gonna meet again?
Yes.
Yes, that's in person.
Next Monday in person.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, you all, final comment from me. I just want to say I'm proud of y'all. Y'all have done something really big tonight. The conversation was rich and it was great. And it just shows that you all genuinely care and that work will continue to happen. But we're moving forward. And so I just want to say it's been an honor to watch you watch this process tonight. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of it. Do we have a motion to close out our meeting tonight?
One more thing, Ranisha, just a reminder that for next week, if you have recommendations that you need to put forward to vote on, please, please, please have those to your IFA facilitators by Wednesday so that I can have them by Wednesday as well. So I can get those out to you all for review prior to that meeting. So our next meeting will be about voting on recommendations again. And so make sure that you get those to your IFA facilitators no later than Wednesday. I'm going to say Wednesday noon.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
We will vote every meeting moving forward. So I encourage you all to read these recommendations prior to and come ready with questions so that we can vote on more. We got through 4, we got a lot more to go. So the more you can prepare yourself coming into the room, the more efficient we will be. So we'll keep that in mind. All right. Do we have a motion to end our meeting?
So moved.
Carson.
Miss Carson made the motion. Mr. Harris, you want a second?
Second.
Second.
Yes.
All right. The meeting is officially over. Thank y'all. Y'all have a wonderful evening.